Genshin Impact has always felt like a game standing right on the edge of greatness, like it's just one step from being remembered as one of the true greats. But here we are, 5 years since its launch, and somehow Genshin still feels unfinished, still feels like it needs to grow. I mean, think about it. Going into Nordcry, we've explored 7 nations, we've met countless characters, we've seen new mechanics, systems, and story arcs added again and again, and yet Genshin Impact still feels like it's holding back. Now, when people ask why, we've always had excuses. Some say, well, that's just how the industry works. Developers really never give players exactly what they want. Others say it's simply the corruption of the gacha model showing itself through Hoyoverse. But here's the thing, those excuses don't hold anymore, not with the new waves of gacha titles we've seen released, and not with the ones on the horizon. Games that actually value their players, games that prove that it can be done differently. And when you look at those examples, the justifications we've always given Genshin start to sound a lot less convincing. In fact, the only real takeaway we've ever seen from Hoyoverse, the only thing that actually makes sense when you look at their attitude towards their players ever since the beginning of Genshin Impact is this: the developers don't care about you. Now, I know that's a bold statement, especially when they said something like this in their live stream.
经常听到一个说法，我相信 Michael 和旅行者们也经常听到啊，叫做元神不想赚钱。
So here's what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to break down everything Genshin has failed to do for its player base, but I won't just stop there. I'll go through the common excuses the community give for these shortcomings and explain why at this point in the game's life cycle, those excuses don't just hold up anymore. And when you hear all of this laid out, the real question becomes why? And I mean that seriously. It's not a rhetorical question, it's not me trying to mock anyone, it's a genuine why. Why do you still support Hoyoverse? Because it's one thing to like a game casually, sure, but it's another thing entirely to defend it so fiercely that you'd attack anyone pointing out its flaws. So if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video, and honestly, I especially want to hear from the Genshin supporters in the comments. Tell me why you support this game, why you think it deserves that support, because I genuinely want to understand. And of course, subscribe in case you are subscribed on any of my future videos. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Top Up Life. Top Up Life is your go-to for resources in your favorite gacha game. Whether it's characters, weapons, currencies, whatever you need, Top Up Life has it, and always at a discount. And right now, you know, yes, the Moon Priestess herself is finally out. And if you want to pull for her at a discount, or maybe you're saving up for Galbarino, who drops at the next patch, I highly recommend checking them out. And here's the best part: if you use my code TIVE, that is TIVE, you get an extra 12% off on top of their already discounted product. So spend wisely, don't overspend, and get what you need with Top of Life. Huge thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into it. Let's start with our good old friend, the skip button. A simple feature, a button that lets you skip content you don't want to sit through. Cutscenes, dialogues, whatever it is, most modern games have it. It's standard, but not Genshin. Now here's the thing, a skip button wouldn't just be nice, it's especially important for a game like Genshin Impact. This is a game that has been running for 5 years, constantly pumping out new content, cutscenes, and dialogues. For new players coming in now, the sheer amount of content they need to slog through is overwhelming. And at this point, a skip button isn't a luxury, it is a necessity. Now, I would love to believe that the absence of a skip button is something that the entire community agrees is a flaw. I mean, no matter how much you love Genshin, 5 years without a skip button, that is just bad development, plain and simple. But every time I think that, I realize I've underestimated the shared delusion of the Hoyoverse community, because somehow people defend this. And the most common defense goes like this: if there was a skip button, people would just skip everything and not play the game. And that entire excuse completely falls apart the moment you hear how long Genshin has been out. If we were still in the first year, fine, I could almost understand it. Still a bad excuse, but at least somewhat logical. Year 1 was about introducing us to the world, the terminology, the concept. Forcing players to sit through all that could be defended as necessary, so everyone understood the foundation of the game. But 5 years in, 5 years, and there's still no skip button. At this point, that excuse becomes laughable, because what you're really saying is this: the story is so weak, so boring, that both the community and the developers believe that giving players a skip button would be detrimental. Think about that. That is not a defense, that is an accidental admission of how you truly feel about the Genshin Impact story. So it goes without saying that these excuses are far too ridiculous to even be taken seriously. So why? What is the actual reason as to why there is no skip button 5 years down the line? When you stop looking at Hoyoverse as a community-driven company, a company that cares for its consumers, and start looking at them as a business, an organization driven by nothing but profits, the real reason becomes so much simpler. See, in every organization, no matter what they create, there are always metrics for success: sales, watch time, user engagement, something measurable that tells them whether a product is working, and Genshin is no different. Every quest, every cutscene, every event in Genshin Impact has one main metric attached to it: time spent engaging. Now, in Genshin Impact's case, with the admission from the community themselves that adding a skip button will be detrimental to the entire story. What happens the moment they add one? That metric plummets. Suddenly, they have proof in the data that people don't actually want to sit through all of this, and Hoyoverse doesn't want to face that reality. So this isn't about helping you enjoy the story. It's not about protecting the lore. They don't care if you love it or hate it. What matters is the number on their charts. As long as that number looks good, the story itself doesn't matter. And when you look at the amount of time that has passed since this game released into the world, this angle makes so much more sense than every other reason that anybody else brings. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. From everything I've seen from Hoyoverse, especially in the last couple of months, I'm genuinely inclined to believe that these devs go out of their way to mock their player base. People often joke that Genshin Impact might be an experiment on how far devs can go screwing over their audience, but honestly, I think that theory holds some weight. What else explains how they've handled the community recently? They put developer feedback stuffed with buzzwords, artifacts loadout, skip functionality, things that the community has begged for years, only for us to discover the most useless, watered down implementations imaginable. And then, as if that was not insulting enough, they have the audacity to claim that they create content like they want to lose money. The insanity is unreal. But if you still don't believe me, if you still believe that I'm being a hater, that I'm not being genuine in my criticism towards Genshin Impact, let's talk about another very important thing in Genshin Impact, the endgame. And credits where credit is due, Genshin actually set the standard here with the Spiral Abyss. Now, I say credits, but it's a bit more complicated because while the Spiral Abyss has become the benchmark, it also comes with a ton of problems. Balancing issues, power creep, and difficulty spikes. Not just in Genshin, but in almost every other gacha game that's tried to copy it. So this isn't really praise for Genshin as much as it is an acknowledgement. For better or worse, Spiral Abyss has become the model for endgame in gacha games, and people have either learned to like it or just accept it. But before we dive deeper into Genshin's endgame, we need to remember the excuse the developers themselves gave for not expanding it. About 2 years ago, Hoyoverse did an interview with GameSpot where they explained the lack of endgame content by saying they were worried about player anxiety. That was their justification. More endgame would make players too anxious. Now, that statement carried two big implications. First, the obvious one. At the time, there was no endgame because the devs did not want to increase player stress. Some people believed this, some didn't, but that was the official line. And second, it implied that if Genshin did ever add new endgame content, it would have to be designed with this player anxiety excuse in mind. In other words, no matter what they built, it would have to be built with player satisfaction taken into great consideration. So now, with these words in mind, let's look at the endgame Genshin actually gave us and ask whether it accounts for player anxiety, starting with the Imaginarium Theater. And honestly, it is no surprise that this endgame was not received well. And it's not even because of combat. In fact, the combat itself is actually easier than what you'd find in the Spiral Abyss. No, the reason people hated Imaginarium Theater is because it proved once again that Hoyoverse lied. Remember, the whole justification for not adding more endgame was player anxiety. But let's think about that for a second. The Spiral Abyss, the so-called anxiety-inducing mode, more than anything, gave players freedom. You can bring whoever you want, old characters, new characters, your favorite, your investment. And I don't know about you, but to me, freedom generally reduces anxiety because you get to do whatever you want. And in this case, you get to fight the way you want. Imaginarium Theater does the exact opposite. If you don't have at least 7 and at most up to 18 characters fully invested in, the mode is practically unplayable. So if you're the type of player who just focuses on your favorites, well, too bad. Suddenly, you are forced to spread resources into characters you don't even care about just to participate. And as if that wasn't enough, the mode limits you further. You can only use characters from 3 random elements, which you don't even know until the patch drops. That means you're pushed not to just invest in unwanted characters, but also to pull for characters you might not want, just in case the elements end up being relevant. Throw in the RNG factor in character selection, and the result is clear. This isn't reducing anxiety, it is multiplying it. It pressures both veterans and newcomers to stretch their rosters wider and deeper than they ever wanted. Now, I can already hear the comments, well, if you don't like it, don't play it, but that is not the point. This critique isn't about whether I personally enjoy the Imaginarium Theater or not. It's about the fact that you cannot trust your own developers when they say things like, we don't want to add endgame because it will cause player anxiety, because this is proof that they don't mean what they say. And the same thing can be said about the Stadium Onslaught. I mean, here's an endgame mode that even whales, people who have invested thousands of dollars, are openly complaining about. So for free-to-play players, it is basically a giant's middle finger to both their time and their so-called anxiety. But here's the main thing about Genshin's endgame. While the community keeps making excuses for why these modes actually work, the most common one being skill issue, the truth is obvious. This has nothing to do with skill. It's not about being good at the game. It's about the company lying, flat out lying about why they did not want to add new endgame. And it's about the community seeing that flat-faced lie and still supporting this company, still backing it up, still defending its flaws and attacking every single person that comes with decent constructive criticism about this game. And I want you to take a step back and really think about it. At the core of everything Genshin does, one thing becomes clear. The developers don't care about the players. Every so-called quality of life improvements they add, either it is so meaningless it doesn't matter at all, Or if it actually does have meaning, it is temporary, something you only enjoy for a short time before it disappears completely. The story, oversimplified, Paimon still exists, boiling every ounce of depth and nuance down to its barest form. The characters, power creep ensures that you must pull for the new units just to keep up. If you don't, you will never experience Genshin at its best. Everything, absolutely everything, comes down to the same thing. The devs don't care about your enjoyment, your satisfaction, or your experience. What they care about is extracting as much as possible from you. Monetization first, players last. But I want to hear from you, Genshin supporters. Tell me if I lied. This video is wide open for anyone to dissect. I want a real discussion in the comments. Are the points I made valid, or am I just twisting things to fit a narrative? And when you reach the inevitable conclusion that I am right, then tell me, why do you still support this company? Drop your thoughts below, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.